Welcome to the English Wine Collection's podcast series, Wine Talks British Business. This episode features one of the forerunners in the English wine industry, owner and founder of Camel Valley, Bob Lindo. Bob's career started at an early age when by chance he joined the RAF. After a number of years as an active pilot, including a career highlight of leading the entire RAF over Buckingham Palace for the Queen Mother's 80th birthday, he bought Camel Valley, which at the time was a working farm. Camel Valley's royal connection continues to this day. Camilla Parker Bowles has mentioned on James Martin's cooking programme that the house champagne for Prince Charles and Camilla is Camel Valley sparkling wine. Bob recalls a few wonderful stories from his career and gives some key advice for people in the industry, saying that it's about travelling the journey rather than just arriving. Bob, thank you very much for being a part of the English Wine Collection's Wine Talks British Business. Really appreciate you being on board. Thank you for welcoming us down today to Camel Valley. To start, could you fill me in on your career? Pick a moment to start and talk me through to where we are today.
Okay, I'll start again. I left school at 16, 3 O-levels, no academic interest whatsoever.
What were the A-levels?
The O-levels, not A-levels.
O-levels, sorry.
Maths, English and history.
Okay.
And I had no academic interest whatsoever. I played in a pop group, became an apprentice on the post office, went to day release classes, got a bit interested academically and suddenly found out it was much easier than I thought. So I did a bridging course and went to university of Essex. So
Okay.
by this time I was a bit older. I was about 20.
What were you studying there?
I was studying telecommunications because that's what I'd done beforehand to get there.
Okay.
So I did that. I mean, I hated it. I did that just as something to be. I like the maths side of it, and that appeals to me. But the other side of it, obviously, was a bit boring. And
So what did that involve back then in terms of, because it's very different now, telecommunications?
well, it was the beginning of now. So the microwaves and all that sort of stuff going on, and anechoic chambers and all that sort of business. So it was a start of now, and there were computers. They were bigger than your house, but they were computers.
Okay.
So it was the beginning of it all. And while I was there, they had a lovely system at Essex where you shared a floor with your own room with a communal area in the middle. And it went boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. So it was a very social sort of setup for all of this time at university. And I met a guy there, Henry, who was in the RAF, and he said to me, if you go to Biggin Hill, you can get a scholarship to fly a Cessna for free. So you just go and get a free
All right.
scholarship. So I went along, and to my amazement, it was terribly competitive. And all of these people had wanted to join the RAF for their entire life, and they were part of this process. So we all started this beginning process to be selected. And many of them were unlucky enough to have some problem like colour blindness or whatever, and they were really upset by it. And then by the fact that they couldn't join because they were colour blind or whatever. And, and here I was intact, without any real intention to join the RAF. And I did the first bit and got the Cessna thing. And they said, well, as you're here, why don't you stay for the full selection procedure? So I stayed. To my amazement, I got offered pilot commission in the RAF and a cadetship at university, which, paid too well to turn down, quite frankly.
Sure.
So I joined the RAF, thoroughly loved it, flew lots of different sorts of aircraft, had a mid-air collision when I was 37, I suppose, 37. Broke my spine, ejected, all that sort of stuff. Now I'm 70, I'm as fit as any 70-year-old, so, I made a pretty good recovery.
Yeah.
And but I'd already decided to leave the RAF and farm because we'd bought this 5 years earlier.
Okay.
So we bought this farm in 1982 so we could work together, and do something. And my wife had been done art history at Essex, but because I moved around every year or two in the RAF, she could never do anything apart from get temporary jobs. So it was an opportunity to do something proper.
Plant roots, quite literally.
Yeah, so in those days, that was about beef and sheep. And the vineyard came along after. And people often say, what made you plant? And the answer for that really is, probably with hindsight, global warming made us plant without knowing about it. So as grape varieties are moving north and vineyards are springing up further north, that in itself is a sign of global warming. And we were, to put it nicely, victims in that this sort of warming thing worked in us, and at that time we were quite fit enough and able to do all the work ourselves. So we dug the holes ourselves, put the vines in ourselves, put the posts in ourselves, put the wires in ourselves. It didn't cost us anything to do.
Yeah.
And then to our amazement, it was successful. So then from that on, we've sort of grown, but very slowly. I'm not somebody who wants to become king of the English wine world and be the biggest or whatever. I mean, I'd settle for being the best.
Yeah.
And that's what I would aim at.
So you're happy to sort of like a methodical approach, or carry on and keep chipping away, keep doing it?
Yeah, I think grow organically. So, for example, every year a few more people will want to have our wine than the year before.
Yeah.
And we'd like to satisfy that demand, but we're not going to go out looking for those people. You'll recall you contacted me about that tasting, I think.
Yes, yeah, no.
That's exactly the sort of thing that I talk about. You know, we could have staff and all went out and about and did stuff, but we don't. There's only us, and we stay here and we react to what happens here.
So essentially, you're building a very solid core.
Yeah.
You're getting your foundation out, and things will spring off.
And it's amazing what happens. For example, we're now in Australia. We've done nothing to get in Australia. We've been contacted by somebody in Australia. So the first pallet went to Australia last week. Nothing to do with any effort on our part whatsoever, other than a person in Australia seeing us on some TV program or imported wine or whatever, and deciding he'd like to join in and do it. We could have flooded Australia with people trying to get that to happen and not had that success.
Without hard sales, as you say.
Yeah.
So how did they come across your wine?
Oh, I think basically all these TV programs which are here are repeated in Australia. You know, everything from Doc Martin to Rick Stein, you know, to Raymond Blanc, James Martin. All these programs are repeated, so they get to see you. There's a demand created. And in America, we were on the Samantha Brown TV travel show. They all came here and did a big travel program. So that created a lot of demand in America, which we satisfied. But we're not in the mood to go over to America and start going from wine shop to wine shop, competing with everybody else in the world to get a few more bottles into America. It's not us.
You're waiting for them to come to you, as you say, on the back of the world.
Yeah. But we're not in a hurry for that. If they come, they come. If they don't, they don't. You know, we're just happy to have a viable business which actually does make a profit, unlike many English vineyards, and keeps all our families ticking over, but with no desire to join the super rich.
I wanted to touch on some of your, going back to the career history you were saying, and as mentioned, you and I had done an interview previously, and you were saying that one of your most memorable moments from your flying career was leading the entire RAF over Buckingham Palace for the Queen Mother's 80th birthday.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been amazing. Can you talk me through that? Where did you guys take off, and how did the whole event go?
Well, I've got to realise this is, you're asking me now because it's 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So we took off all over. So we met up over London. I think we met over somewhere like Gatwick or Heathrow. I can't remember exactly which one now. But
what were you flying?
Falcon.
Okay.
And it was the entire Royal Air Force pretty much. You know, all the aircraft at the time: Buccaneers, Phantoms, Harriers, Canberras, and it was quite difficult to fly in formation because the fast jets couldn't fly slow enough. Some of the slower aircraft. So it's really quite a tricky thing to do. And I took a photograph, which I've still got, as I flew over Buckingham Palace, and they're all going like this. So sometime later, when I met the Duke of Edinburgh, he said to me, "Have we met before?" I said, "Yes, but you won't remember." So I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you were doing this at the time." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I flew over your house in a Vulcan with the RAF behind and waved at you, and you waved back." He said, "Oh, very funny."
I don't suppose you've seen that picture that you took.
He's seen it.
Yeah, have you shown him?
No. I'm sure they've seen it before because it gets taken by everyone who flies over will take that photograph. I'm sure. But I'm also very careful not to release it because it may have security implications.
Yeah,
because it's the layout of Buckingham Palace and the grounds and all the other stuff, which I'm sure everyone knows, but you have to be slightly cautious about these things.
Well, and in theory, you shouldn't have taken that picture anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I think it was because, it came as part of our, we take it, send it off, it came back again as part of a thank you from, a royal thank you for the flying over and all that sort of stuff.
So, as you said, there wasn't much prep for that.
No. All you're doing in peacetime is training so you can do that sort of thing anyway. So when it comes to, you just do it. There's no, if you need to practice, then you shouldn't be doing it.
That's a good point. I guess I thought that then part of the formation would be, as you say, where the planes are, where they line up, especially with the different speeds, as you've just mentioned.
Yeah, but you can predict all that beforehand. I mean, but bearing in mind that everyone will have practiced at doing their own individual skill all the time, every day, and people would know whether you were capable of doing that or not.
Well, as you say, you wouldn't have been invited if that wasn't
that's okay.
possible.
Yeah.
So continue on with your career. I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, but I know you were involved in quite a horrific accident at one point, and you ended up having to learn to walk again, which
it's a slight. I mean, it sounds more dramatic than it was. I mean, I broke my spine in 3 places. I was confined to a bed for several weeks.
Yeah.
And when I eventually got out, but it was agony to get. I mean, I couldn't get out to start with. It took a lot of effort and people to help me to sort of get out. And then slowly I improved a bit, but I couldn't bend. I couldn't bend at all. I was practically always vertical.
Is that because of the support to get the spine to mend correctly?
Well, it was all mended solidly, So basically I went to Headley Court then, which is a rehabilitation centre, which is the most fun anybody who's not actually ill can have. So you've got all these injured people who aren't ill, but not much to do.
Yeah,
and they can still go to the bar and all the other things, and there's both sexes are represented, so it's like party time when you get there for the entire time. But it was fantastic because I was rehabilitated to the point that I can almost touch my toes now. But I'll give you an example of something I can do.
Okay.
Which not many people can do before the accident.
Right.
And that's I can go this way round and look that way.
Okay, so you twisted your top body to look over your
and look all the way the other way.
Okay, I
see. Look through 180 now. When I'm bearing in mind that I couldn't actually move in 1987, I've got all my movement back pretty much. I mean, touching my toes, I can't quite do because I've got a solid bit in my back or whatever. But it hasn't inhibited me, and I'm at an age where, I get rid of arthritis from it, but so does everybody my age.
Of course. You can still get out there and pick the grapes.
Yeah, I can still do anything. I still run if I want to.
Excellent.
And jump and things like that, and do mock side steps under rugby's arm and things like that.
I wanted to, just staying on that now, I just what, if you don't mind saying, what happened in the accident? Did the plane go down?
And I'm happy to tell you exactly what happened in the accident. But I'll preface it by saying that of the people I joined with, I would say 30% of them are dead from accidents, flying accidents. And flying accidents had been constant since World War II. Every 10,000 hours, there was an aircraft lost since World War II.
God.
So if you fly for 10,000 hours, you lose an aircraft. Now, I think things have completely changed now, partly because the aircraft are millions and millions and millions then. But we trained, in the Cold War, everyone trained to the limit. And if I've got one little thing I'll be controversial about, I'm very disappointed that after the Cold War there wasn't a medal, because people went through quite a lot.
Okay.
You wouldn't think it, but some of the places like, I remember when we were at Scampton, the families are behind barbed wire. This is the Cold War. If you want to take your son or daughter for a walk on a buggy, you had to go through barbed wire and a gate. And we were constantly doing exercises, tacky vows, mini vows. Almost once a week there'd be some exercise, sirens going off all night. It felt like a war footing, even though you weren't at war.
Yeah.
And I was squadron commander of the Refresher Flying Squadron, and the idea of that was to refresh experienced pilots, Harrier pilots or whatever, who'd been on ground tours before they went back to their frontline aircraft. And we were doing a tail chasing exercise, which is a forerunner really for combat. It's not combat, but it's a forerunner for combat.
So it was called tail chasing?
Yeah, tail chasing. So you do loops, and we're allowed to do loops, barrels, all sorts of things, and then you follow each other around, and in slightly loose formation. It's called tail chasing, and you practice catching up, leading and going away or whatever. And I was the lead aircraft, and then we pulled up in doing these quite advanced manoeuvres, and the guy came down the other way. Instead of just hitting me just missing me, just hit me and knocked the canopy off the aircraft and the wing and the tail. So basically, we were left, two of us in an aircraft with no controls.
And one wing, is that right?
Yeah, one. Well, no, I think we had two wings but no tail, so it wouldn't fly. And I'd always promised my wife that I would eject and I wouldn't be thinking about it. And we just had a briefing procedure, which was you say to the guy you're flying with, if we need to eject, I'll say eject, eject. And if you don't go straight away, I'll be gone. So I said, eject, eject. He said, pardon, I said, goodbye. And off I went, and he was next. So we both came out. The only person hurt was me. I was hurt in the ejection and in the landing. Everybody else just walked off and they were absolutely fine. And in the scheme of things at the time, it wasn't considered massive. And mid-air collisions, where there's one in the expensive aircraft just last month, wasn't there, in Germany?
Yes.
I think 2 Eurofighters or something. You know, it's common and it's unavoidable. And I explained to you why. Imagine your closing speed is 400 knots each. 88 feet per second is 60 miles an hour, I think, something like that. So basically, you're talking about, even if you look permanently in the same direction, you wouldn't acquire that person until they were about 10 seconds from hitting you. Now, it takes more than 10 seconds to look in all directions.
Of course.
So it isn't actually possible to avoid mid-air collisions from time to time. They're statistically quite likely. And Air Clues, the RAF magazine, flying magazine, Institute of Aviation Medicine, did a whole article on it saying that they were, to some extent, slightly inevitable. So it's just one of those things. I hit the ground with a real thud and really damaged my back further. And then it was the middle of a NATO exercise. So aircraft were everywhere, and I didn't get picked up for 2 hours.
Oh, God.
And but luckily, I kept my wits about me. The doctor came along, wanted to give me painkillers and things like that, and I said I wouldn't do anything until I got to hospital. And a helicopter came along eventually, took me to hospital. And then once I was in hospital, I relaxed, because I knew I'd done all I could do. And I was put in it was Northallerton Hospital, fantastic camera. The only difficulty I had in the ward was there was so much fun, it hurt to laugh. There were so many jokes going, because there were people who had motorbike injuries and all these other things. So you'd be in bed, someone would be playing a Billy Connolly. I remember the Billy Connolly Australia tape. I had to put my fingers in my ears to stop laughing because it hurt so much, to laugh.
That's a good way to heal, though.
Yeah, it is. I think it was, and there was and there was a young student nurse who we all fell in love with, and she really ran the entire ward on her own, from what I could make out. And eventually, I was taken to RAF Ely and got a room of my own, which was terrible. Bored to tears. A room of your own with a TV just means you take it in turns mentally to switch the TV on. Hate it so much you turn it off. Hate the silence so much you turn it on again. I hated that.
Yeah.
But eventually, I came out. Came back to here, and somebody many years ago did a piece just after that. They came here, did a piece for someone like the Times or something, and I crawled around the entire farm. They had electric fence around because we still had 150 sheep at this stage running around the farm. And so the first thing I did, I was told to sit still, but the first thing I did was go out, crawl around the farm, fix the electric fence, and I'm convinced the reason why I made such a recovery was I was as active as I could possibly be from the moment I could. I did everything I could do.
You just got up and really did your
got
best.
on with it. Got on with it. I mean, obviously, the basic rule of injuries is you can go up to the point where it really hurts, but you can't go beyond that point.
You've got to push yourself enough, haven't you, to make progress?
Yes, but you mustn't, overdo it, understate it. There's one guy been crushed by a tank up against a wall. And the tank, all the wall gave, so it was him that gave. Somebody else had a riding accident there from the Royal Horse Artillery or whatever, and had a riding accident. There was me, there was a couple of people, I think, with mental issues as well, mental health issues.
I think it sounds like, as we were saying, it's a great group effort. You're all there, you're all going through it, and you could just
well, they had this fantastic thing they did. When every morning we'd assemble in a big hall, and they would do warming up exercises. Now, when you first got there, maybe you laid on a bed and maybe you moved your right hand or something.
Yeah.
And when you left, you were on the stage doing the exercises for everybody else on your last day, and they did what you do for the last day. So it was, you could see your aim.
It's a great way of showing the progression as
You could see where you were aiming to go, because these people had been you, and now one day hopefully you would be them.
Lead by example.
Yeah.
So you're showing that you've got through the hard times and you've made it.
Yeah.
Do you have a chance to fly at all these days?
I've had one chance to fly. It's funny. I don't miss it because I did everything you can do. I mean, everything from firing guns, bombs, rockets. I've done all that stuff. Flown all the formations you can think of. Led aerobatic teams. I've done all that.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did do was a friend of mine called John Darby was a commercial pilot, private pilot for one of the guys who owns a factory in Cornwall. He was his helicopter pilot, and he had a new helicopter, and they needed a co-pilot to make up the numbers. That's all I really was required to do on this helicopter, which I'd never flown before. And it wasn't that I was in a position of responsibility, but you needed to have two people in this for this particular aircraft. And so I was able to see whether I could still fly, and I could still fly. It's like riding a bike.
The controls different though?
No, not when you're going along.
No?
I mean, they are when you're hovering.
Joystick, is that right?
Yeah, when you're hovering and all that sort of stuff, it's different. But when you're going along, it's exactly the same.
We need to just let you have a go.
Yeah. If it let me have all the go.
Lick the lips.
But again, he was an ex-examining, CFS examining QFI, was really very experienced. QFI is qualified flying instructor.
You've got a strong royal connection with Camel Valley, obviously with yourself and your flying days, and then you now have the Royal Warrant as well, which His Royal Highness Prince Charles gave. So, I mean, that must have been such an honour. How did it come about?
Well, it started with my son being in London at Paddington Station, somewhere like that, or Leadenhall Market, and he was manning us Camel Valley stand in the middle of all this, and their Royal Highnesses came by and started talking to him and asked if they could visit. And Sam, being a youngster, without not terribly sophisticated at the time, said, "Yeah, we're open Monday to Friday, 10 to 5." And there's a tour at 2:30, in which they laughed. The whole entourage laughed. It was really funny and amusing. But they did then give us a royal visit. Duchess of Cornwall came, and she's really nice, actually. I've got to say, a very pleasant person. And she sat exactly where you're sitting and had her lunch, for example.
Okay.
And then, so we supplied a small amount then, and then we had a second royal visit a bit later. And progressively, we supplied wine over a number of years. You have to do it for a number of years, and not just like the odd bottle. It has to be a regular thing. And she very kindly said on James Martin's programme last year that we were house champagne, she said, she put it, which was really nice.
Amazing.
And but there's another big thing to it, which I have to say, and that's the sustainability side.
Okay.
You can't get a Royal Warrant unless you've got a real sustainability policy, and we're fully solar powered here, things like that.
Are you? Okay.
All of our fruit waste fed to dairy cows and all that sort of business. So we have a full, and we won the trophy for the most sustainable Cornish business in 2017. That's a really important part of getting a Royal Warrant. So you can fulfill everything else, but you must pass the sustainability thing as well.
As you said, that does tie in very heavily with Prince Charles' ethos of the farming, so it makes sense. They're very on it.
Yeah.
Okay. How did Sam relate to the news of getting it? So as you say, he's involved with a lot we do here.
Sam's more than involved.
Yes, that's very good.
It's a funny thing. Well, no, it is a good point, because I'm 70 now, I'm retired, but I do less of everything all the time. So if you came here 10 years ago, I'd still be doing all the tractor work, that sort of thing. I don't anymore.
Sure.
Not a Sam, actually, somebody else does. You can do it, will do it, and fill in if you need me. Winemaking, I suppose until about 2005, I was not on my own exactly, but I was definitely making the wine mentally.
Yeah.
And now Sam is definitely making all the wine mentally. My role now, and I think it is a valuable role, is to be a sounding board for options.
Yeah, of course.
So I always used to ask anybody their opinion, like as this way of trying to resolve a decision. And now Sam can just say to me, I don't know whether to do this or that. And I can realise that if he can't decide which, they're probably equally valid. So just choose one and then you can get on with it.
So you still put it back on him though to make a decision? You
Yeah.
do that for him?
No. I mean, I'll tell him what I think he should do, but I really don't mind whether he does it or not.
Yeah.
So it's entirely up to him. And a good example would be the large new storage building that you came up with, a big green one.
Yeah.
That was something that Sam thought we needed, and I didn't think we did need it. But as long as he got on with it, made it work, got it done, and got it all working, everything, I was quite happy with that.
It's interesting you bring it up actually, because I think I saw recently in a report with you in the drinks business how you were talking about how vineyards need storage for the wines.
Yeah.
And you're saying that came via Sam.
Yeah, because he did a maths and statistics degree, so he knew we needed storage a long time before I knew we needed storage.
Okay.
He worked it all the way through. Yeah. And it's an interesting thing. The one thing I had realised many years ago is that just from the basis that you can't compress a liquid means that it isn't one of those things that you can build sort of data banks of. You have to physically be able to store everything from the tank, the bottle and everything. And in sparkling wine, it's going to be at least 3 years in the storage before you sell it. And that's assuming you sell it all on the same day.
Exactly.
So you may need another year or two. So you may need 5 years storage. And then if you're looking...
You've got a backup then, haven't you?
You have.
Yeah.
And it's terribly important that you've got stocks. And this is why, when I go around the world, I listen to what other people say to me and try to remember the one-liners. And I was in a Spanish winery last year, been going for hundreds of years, and we started talking about export. He said, export? He said, that's to make cellar space. And that's all export is.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that's an interesting point of view. His idea of export to create cellar space. It's not that he wants to export for its own self.
That doesn't say he's interested in it. He's like, no, just clear it out so I can make some more wine.
Make some more space, make some more wine. And I think you've always got this dichotomy between not enough space and too much wine and not enough stocks. It's impossible to have exactly the right amount of everything. So, but you mustn't run out.
No, of course.
The odd times we've run out, it's taken us a year or two to regain that position. So you need stocks.
Because that's been a bit of an issue for the industry, especially a lot of the smaller vineyards and the wineries as well, who are buying in grapes. It's okay, we've just had 2 great summers, but it's going to take time before any of that comes out.
Yeah, it does. And 2018 should have filled most people's, I think. 2019 was pretty good for most people.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing I think I'm quite keen on stressing, so I've been doing this for 30 years and I've seen good years like that before. 2005 and 2006 were 2 really good years in a row with very good crops and all the other stuff. Sure. Then we had 7 and 8, which weren't very good at all. And on average, it's very challenging to produce grapes in the UK, but it might save might be a blessing in disguise, because overproduction is the biggest enemy.
We don't overkill it, as you say, because we're such a small area to produce it. So, how long did it take for you guys to get going before you thought, I've really got a business here?
Well, funnily enough, because we had a farm, small farm with sheep, beef and vines, the concept to start with is the farm making a profit?
Yeah.
So, and we pretty much did, and we had the holiday cottages as well, which the first thing we did was convert them because they were 2 old barns. We bought this place because it was a lovely, attractive place to be, a lovely, sunny, drenched, warm place, and that's due south, and the whole place.
Sure.
This time of the year, there's no sun that side, for example, it's all this side.
Yeah.
So there was that, a bit of salmon fishing, some old barns.
There's some salmon fishing?
Yeah, salmon fishing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was a big attraction for the people staying in the cottages in those days. It's not now.
It's idyllic, yeah.
It's sort of gone off a bit now, the salmon fishing. But and it's an odd thing, I suppose. I wouldn't have done it, doing what people have to do now. They invest massive amounts at the beginning.
You mean planting and...
Yeah, making a big loss, because they do it all at the beginning. I mean, if you what we've done is slowly over 30 years, we've expanded a bit each year, and done it all gradually. Well, the modern way of doing it is to buy it all in the beginning, which reminds me of my brother's stamp collecting. He retired and decided he needed a hobby, so he thought he'd take up stamp collecting. But the problem was he was wealthy enough to buy all the stamps. And it took him a weekend and he'd finished. Well, I see that a bit.
Okay.
In viticulture, you're wealthy enough to have your winery in the beginning, your massive vineyard, all the processing stuff, well, it's actually quite nice to travel the journey to get there rather than be there.
As you say, to have the build of the business.
Yeah, this idea of travelling rather than arriving.
So on that note, how long did it take for you or rather how long was it when you, from first planting and having Camel Valley to think, I've got an established business here and we're doing okay?
Well, I think, as I said, we always made a small profit because luckily enough, we've got the Camel Trail here as well. Have you heard of the Camel Trail?
I have, but please carry on.
Well, 500,000 people cycle through the vineyard every year, so we can be as busy as we want to be as far as on-trade sales are concerned. So
you have the pass of trade in that sense.
Yeah, we can be as busy as we want to be. Yeah. If we open the gate, we're busy. If we close it, we're not busy. And all of those people who cycle by are going to drive by the sign on the top road and find out where we are and come. So we've been very lucky for selling wine here. And so, I think the time that I actually had a different thought, but amounts to the same thing, was about the time of 9/11. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Sam was in Singapore and he phoned me up to say, have you seen the TV?
Right.
And I hadn't, obviously, so I went and looked at the TV. And that was in the course of the conversations that went on over the next few days, I realised that this had got to a point where it would be difficult for us to continue with the growth, and we might not want to, just the two of us.
Yeah.
So I just said to Sam, look, it's entirely up to you. Obviously, nobody expects you to come home. You're now he's now teaching in Singapore. You may love it, it's fine. But if you think you might want to have this business, you need to think fairly soon, because we may not want to continue, for our entire lives.
Of course.
Doing that. And so actually, I'm sick of looking at a computer screen. I'm coming home. So he came home, and he's a real natural for it, because he has a different perspective to most other people, because he's got this mathematical brain, and I've got that brain as well. I've got a mathematical brain. And so we can have this mathematical language conversation. If you look at a tweet today, I put out something that people were discussing about slopes and orientation, all that stuff. So I wrote down the equation. I just know what the equation is for it. Okay. I've got that brain, and that's handy for things like storage space and all the other stuff, but it's also a way of knowing wasting your time and when you're not wasting your time.
Yeah, of course.
These things are worth having.
But you have to know how to use it as well, though.
Yeah.
If you're obviously thinking, do a formula for that, it's actioning it.
Yeah.
So, on that note, there's a massive growth in the English wine industry in the last 30 years, and you touched on it briefly, but where do you think it can go? As an industry, where can we develop?
Well, if you take a big picture and look at what's happened to industries before, new wine industries before, generally what happens is they expand to a point where there's a big shakeout, there's a bit of overproduction, a few people go bust, and then they regroup and carry on. There's no reason to think that won't happen in the UK at some point, because you can plant anywhere, so there's no limit to production. But there's always a limit to consumption and to what people will buy. So that's possibly going to happen. But from our perspective, we just think about here.
Sure. We
don't think about what will happen everywhere else. We just think what will happen here. And the one thing which I find a bit reassuring here is one's a funny story, really. One of the major distributors, I was attached to them one day, so we never bothered to take anything to Cornwall. We call it Fortress Camel. Whenever you go to a wine shop in Cornwall and say, would you like to? They go, oh no, we have Camel Valley here. So there's that. Yeah. But also there's the fact that this is such a location. You wouldn't guess coming here today on a sort of a bit of a dank day in nearly November. But yesterday we were really busy all day. We had loads of people on the tours. I've got 32 people booked on Wednesday night, and normally I'll get 50 by Wednesday for the grand tour.
Where are they coming from?
They're mostly down in Cornwall for the week, okay. and these are booked a long time ahead. So every single Wednesday and Thursdays as well in August, throughout the season from April till October, I still do the grand tour, which is 18 quid. People have a brief look at the vineyard, round the winery, taste 6 wines, bit of stand-up bit of a laugh, but nothing too serious.
No flybys.
Pardon? No
No
flybys.
flybys.
and we get 50 people at a time. That's an interesting thing, actually. On my accident, one of the things that was really good in my favour was there was a barrel on in my squadron for somebody who was leaving that night.
Right.
And my boss said to me, "Go on, Bob, have a pint." I said, "No, thanks, boss, I'm flying tomorrow." And I'll still be in very good stead.
I'm surprised.
Well, in those days, there was a different attitude to drinking than there is now. I'm all in favour of a healthier attitude and people drinking less. I'm completely in favour of that.
Absolutely.
And the biggest likelihood that's going to affect vineyards and wine in general is people drinking less. The young people of today are not so interested in drinking, and so I think you've got to start thinking, we are thinking about some non-alcoholic drinks as well. Maybe that's what will be the future.
It's quite an interesting time when you brought that up. I mean, do you think that English wine and the English wine industry can be a very valuable industry for England? We could have a good export market. We can have a bit of sustainability.
Do you mean financial sustainability?
Yeah, and just as an industry, maintain the rapport.
Yeah, I mean, it's so impossible to tell. I can't sort of really comment on that really too much. I mean, I think, again, I try to remember what people say to me and things stick in my mind. And I remember once I was in a different business many, many years ago, and I was trying to get my competitor to do something. And he said, "I'll give you some advice." And I mean this in the nicest possible way, not like it will sound, but I do mean this well. Mind your own business, not mind your own business, but take care of your own business and don't worry about me. And I thought that was really good advice, and I've thought of that many times since. So the only thing we do is we try to take care here, do the right thing here in this business, in the hope that it will have some longevity. But there is no business that lasts forever.
No, of course.
You think of all the sort of famous names like Woolworths and all the other places that are not here anymore. So you can't expect to last forever, but you can hope that maybe you have a modicum of success over a period of time.
It's very sound advice. Mind your business.
Yeah.
Get on with what you're doing.
Yeah, and don't look at other people. And I think that's so good. I mean, there's a little bit of a contretemps on Twitter today where someone is a relatively new entrant to the English wine industry is saying that English wine industry needs to wake up and all this sort of business. Well, it doesn't sound great, and you will wake up people with that, but they won't think kindly of you after. So I try to be much more diplomatic in these things if I can be.
Well, I think, as you say, just maintain a level of output that you can excel at, and then just keep doing that. Keep it constant.
Yeah.
So on the notion of wines, do you what other wines do you enjoy drinking other than English? What's your cellar like at home?
My cellar is about 5 bottles, I suppose. Basically.
Okay.
There's the odd thing that you buy, which you think that you will be drinking at some stage, never quite get round to. For example, Tesco's did a 6-bottle Bordeaux case in 2009, one really good year. I think it was 2009, can't remember exactly. And all in wooden case, and these were very top quality clarets, and they're still in the box under the stairs, and I don't imagine I will ever open them. I don't know why. I'm not saving them. It's just, and I think that's what happens in cellars. People buy all this stuff and never actually get around to drinking it. Now, my drinking thing is quite simple. And I get asked this a lot on tours. How much do you drink? I say, what do you drink? I say, well, I know what I drink every night. I look in the fridge at the end of the day, and one with that much, 2 or 3 inches at the bottom, I will share that. Okay. That's whatever that is fine. It's no good leaving it, because especially if it's finished the next day, it won't be in top quality condition. You can pour it away. You probably should pour it away.
Yeah, of course.
But that also limits the volume as well, because I only ever drink. Maybe before and during dinner. I never drink after dinner. I never did in the RF.
Okay.
In things like dining in nights, the drinking would start after dinner. I never touched a drop after dinner.
Sure, so for you it's the accompaniment with the food.
Yeah, I never drink in the mornings. I would never drink at wine tastings. I wouldn't give you tuppence for a drink after dinner. I'm quite happy to. I've always been very lucky. I have a small capacity. So
Okay.
even growing up, as a youngster, I used to enjoy a pint of beer. Maybe I enjoy two, but don't give me three because I just can't drink it. It's too much.
So on that note, you're saying touching about food and wine. And so you come to the end of the night, you have to have port, or do you just stop with your glass of wine?
I wouldn't drink anything after I finish eating. I wouldn't have a port.
Okay, so it's just with
Wouldn't have anything after that. Well, I don't even like a sweet wine.
Yes, it's very disciplined of you.
It's not disciplined actually. It's just the way I am.
I think that's probably
I'm not
part of the same thing. As
Well,
your
again,
character.
So you're taking me back a bit now because I remember at evening classes when I was about 17. So the guy who was a lecturer for the evening class, it was social studies, was talking about people that commit various sorts of crimes, without going into detail, various unpleasant sorts of crimes.
Sure.
And he was saying that they're subject to those temptations to do that. We're not, hopefully. So you could be grateful when you're not. And if you are, you need some level of sympathy because you're having to put off doing something that you want to do but can't do. Well, that's where I'm lucky with these drinks after dinner. I just don't want them.
Yeah.
There's nothing discipline involved.
I think that falls in line with I pick up a lot of focus from you. So throughout your career, winemaking, I imagine that comes through. That no, I'm done now. I'm just going to get on with what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Bob, amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah. I think there's one thing I think the English wine industry should compete on.
Sure.
Continuously, in the right frame of mind, but in quality on wine awards.
Okay.
So really, really important to win awards in blind tastings. It's really important. That's how we got here.
Yeah.
People forget that, but that's actually how we got here. That's how everyone got there, is winning stuff. And it's so important. And to give you an idea how important it is to us, a nice little anecdote of what every time we release something, we don't like it. We're convinced it's gone horribly wrong.
Okay.
There's nothing we can't put our finger on or whatever. Then it'll win a gold medal and suddenly we start to like it. Then it'll win a trophy and we love it. Nothing's changed, but the perception has changed for us. So obviously the perception will change for other people. And the other thing I think is terribly important is to have visitors to your vineyard, because that's how you know the quality of your wine, because they will let you know.
Sure.
If you pour somebody a wine and they're not happy, or they are happy, they can't hide it. You'll know immediately. So that's the best feedback you can have.
That's direct feedback, as you say, it's right there for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bob, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
it. Thank you.